Rainbow Magic, The Pet Fairies, Katie the Kitten Fairy. The Fairyland Palace, Bramber Stables, Jack Frost's Ice Castle, the Dayeon's house, the park, Christie's house, Jamie Cooper's house, the Wainwright's house, the spring show, Strawberry Farm, Weatherbury Village. A very unusual kitten. Catch! Christy Tate tossed a bar into the air. She watched as her friend Rachel Walker ran across the grass to catch it. It was the first day of spring vacation, and Rachel had come to stay with Christy's family for a whole week. The two girls were playing in the park, where Christy's parents were out of the grocery store. The sun was shining brightly, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It felt like a perfect spring weather. Rachel hurried up the bar triumphantly. "Your turn," she said. She called, "Ready?" Before Christy could reply, loud barking rang through the air. Both girls spun around to see a large black dog bounding past them. Rachel jumped back as the dog raced by. "Is that a squirrel it's chasing?" she asked, watching the dog run off. Christy shielded her eyes from the sun to take a better look. "No, it's a kitten!" she exclaimed, her eyes widened at the sight of a tiny white and gray kitten scrambling across the grass. "What's a kitten doing in the park?" "I don't know, but that dog's about to catch it," Rachel said in alarm. "Come on!" The two girls started to run after the animals, but they hadn't gotten very far before a sudden flash of bright light flickered through the air. A cloud of amber-colored sparkles swirled around the kitten. Seconds later, the kitten had vanished, and an enormous striped tiger had appeared in its place. The tiger turned toward the dog and roared. Right away, the dog stopped short and put its ears back. Then, with a frightened whimper, it turned and bolted away as quickly as it could. Christy and Rachel watched in disbelief as the tiger turned back into a kitten with another flash of bright sparkles. Then the kitten shook itself off, licked one paw, and padded off happily through the grass. Rachel rubbed her eyes. "Did you just see that?" she asked, her eyes still fixed on the kitten. Christy nodded. "That looked like fairy magic," she exclaimed. Rachel grinned. "That's exactly what I thought," she replied. Whenever she and Christy were together, they always had the best magical adventures. This looked like it might be a start of another one. Rachel paused thoughtfully. "But we haven't seen any fairies here." Christy frowned. "That is strange, isn't it?" she said. "Let's follow the kitten. Maybe it will lead us to a fairy." The two girls hurried after the small kitten. It didn't seem to be in any real rush as it wandered along, stopping to pounce on a daisy or a bat or a blade of grass. "Where do you think it's going?" Rachel whispered. "It seems like it's heading right for the fence." They both watched as the kitten walked cheerfully toward a wooden fence at the edge of the grass. The fence was too high for the kitten to climb over, but it showed no sign of changing direction. "How is the kitten going to?" Christy started. Then she broke off in surprise. With another swirl of sparkles, the kitten had suddenly shrunk. Now it was the size of a mouse, small enough to squeeze through a tiny hole at the bottom of the fence. Christy's eyes widened as she watched its little gray tail disappear through the hole. "Wow!" Rachel gasped, staring after the kitten. "Quick! There's a gate in the fence over that way. We can't lose track of that kitten." Both girls rushed through the gate and saw that the kitten was first size again. The only sign that it had ever been any different was a faint trail of magic sparkles glimmering behind it. Just then the kitten twitched its whiskers and bounded toward a fast food cart. As the two girls got closer, they saw it run up to a man who was standing by the vendor. "Fish sticks and fries, please," the girls heard him say. The kitten meowed loudly. It would itself between the man's legs. It rounded itself between the man's legs as the vendor handed him a plateful of food. The man chuckled. "Sorry, kitten," he said, sitting down on a nearby bench. "This is my lunch, not yours." As the man began to eat, Christy elbowed Rachel and then nodded toward the kitten. Its eyes were glowing a bright green. A small cloud of amber color sparkling glitter in the air as the kitten looked up hopefully at the man's food. A second later, a fish stick tumbled off the man's plate and landed at the kitten's feet. With a happy meow, the kitten pounced on the fish stick and began to eat it. The man laughed. "It's your lucky day, kitty," he said. "And how did I knock that off the plate?" Rachel and Christy grinned at each other. They knew that the sneaky kitten had used magic to make the fish stick fall to the ground. That was definitely fairy magic, Christy exclaimed. She watched as the kitten gobbled up the fish stick, cleaned its whiskers, and trotted off down a tree-lined path. "Yes," Rachel agreed. "Something strange is going on. Let's see where the kitten goes now." The girls set off after the kitten again. They hadn't gotten far when they heard a scuffling sound along the side of the path. Suddenly, 6 green goblins jumped out from behind a tree. They were all clutching butterfly nets. "There it is," shouted one of the goblins, pointing at the kitten. "Get it! Surprise attack!" "Goblins!" Christy cried in surprise. "Oh no!" At the sight of the goblins, the kitten's fur stood on end and its tail fluffed up like prickly bush. It hissed at the goblins, then turned and ran away from them towards the girls. With nowhere else to go, it leaped right up into Rachel's arms. "Oh!" Rachel gasped, surprised to find the little bundle of fur in her arms. She held the kitten to her body protectively as the goblin approached. "Give us that kitten," one of them ordered. "It belongs to Jack Frost, and we've been sent here to bring it home," he added. Christy and Rachel hesitated. They'd met Jack Frost's goblins many times before, and they knew what sneaky creature they could be. Could they really trust the goblin to be telling the truth? The kitten gave a soft meow, and both girls looked down at it. Its eyes were shining bright green again. Sparkles streamed out of its mouth and swirled around the air. The kitten meowed again, but this time the girls could hear words in its meows. "Meow. Don't believe those terrible goblins," the kitten declared. I belong to Katie the Kitten Fairy, but I'm last. Christy's finger quickly closed over the locket around her neck. She and Rachel had been given matching gold lockets for a fairy dust by the Fairy King and Queen. The fairy dust would take them straight to Fairyland if they ever needed help. Now seemed like a very good time to use the lockets. We don't believe you, Rachel told the goblins, and you are not getting this kitten. Just then Christy threw gold fairy dust all over herself, Rachel, and the kitten. With angry cries, two of the goblins dropped their butterfly nets and dove towards the girls. They stretched their gnarled green hands out to grab the kitten. Rachel yelped and tried to dodge out of the way, but luckily the fairy dust was already working its magic. The girls were swept up into the sky. Below them, the goblins pounced on empty air and fell onto the grass. Rachel and Christy laughed in relief as they felt the fairy dust whisking them through the air. After a moment, they couldn't see the park below, just a blur of bright, sparkling color all around them. Rachel heard the kitten close in case it was frightened. It seemed used to fairy magic, though ours snuggled up unhappily in Rachel's arms. Its little ears blew back in the warm, sparkly breeze. Moments later, the girls floated softly down the ground. As the magical breeze died away, they both smiled to see that they were back in Fairyland. "We're fairies!" Rachel exclaimed happily, fluttering her delicate wings. They were there to the fairy palace, and the king and queen cheered, waving at King Auburn and Queen Titania approached. As King Auburn and Queen Titania approached, then she frowned. "They don't look very happy, though." Rachel watched as the king and queen came closer, followed by a crowd of anxious-looking fairies. Her excitement at being back at Fairyland disappeared as she saw how unhappy they all looked. What was wrong? Missing pets. "Hello, your majesties," Rachel said politely, giving the queen and king a curtsy with the kitten still in her arms. "Is everything all right?" A fairy in a pale yellow dress with long dark hair suddenly caught sight of the kitten. A happy smile lit up her face. "You've brought Shimmer back," she cried. "Oh, thank you. The kitten jumped out of Rachel's arms and scampered over to the pretty fairy. The fairy scooped her up, burying her face in Shimmer's soft, silky fur. "Thank you so much," she said again, putting Shimmer down and returning to hug Christy and Rachel. "I'm Katie the Kitten Fairy, and I can't tell you how glad I am to see Shimmer back in Fairyland." "You're welcome," Rachel said, smiling. The king and queen stepped forward. "How nice to see you again, girls," the king said warmly. "These are our pet fairies. We've already met Katie. This is Bella the Bunny Fairy, Georgia the Guinea Pig Fairy, Lauren the Puppy Fairy, Harriet the Hamster Fairy, Molly the Goldfish Fairy, and Penny the Pony Fairy." Each fairy stepped forward when her name was called and curtsied to the girls with a little smile. Christy couldn't help noticing that their smiles looked a bit sad. "So where's are the other pets?" she asked curiously. The fairies all sighed. Jack Frost stole them. Queen Titiana told the girls sadly. He took them to his ice castle and then sent a ransom note. It said that the pet fairies couldn't find him a pet of his own. That if the pet fairies couldn't find him a pet of his own, he would keep other magic pets for himself. Oh no, Christy cried out. He can't do that. He already has, the king responded. And without their magic pets, the pet fairies can't look after all their pets in your world. The pet fairies are responsible for helping pets that are lost or homeless, the queen explained. But they can't do that if their own magic pets are missing. Can't we give Jack Frost another pet so that he let the magic pets go? Rachel suggested. The queen shook her head. I'm afraid it's not that simple, she sighed. In Fairyland, pets choose their owners. And no pet has ever chosen Jack Frost. I'm not surprised, Christy blurted out. Jack Frost was always causing trouble in Fairyland. No wonder none of the magic pets wanted to live with him. The king was gazing at Shimmer with a thoughtful expression on his face. Christy, Rachel, where did you find Shimmer? He asked. He thought all the magic pets were locked in Jack Frost's ice castle. She was wandering around in the local park, Christy replied. She looked lost. The kitten gave a sudden loud meow, as if she was joining in the conversation. Katie listened hard, then nodded. Shimmer says that all the magic pets were being kept in Jack Frost's castle, she said, but they managed to escape, and now they're all roaming around the human world. The pet fairies looked very happy to hear this, but Shimmer was still meowing. Katie listened again, then bit her lip. Jack Frost has sent out a group of goblins to catch them and take them back to the ice castle, she announced anxiously. Oh, our poor little pets. The other pet fairies gasped, and the king and queen looked worried too. We have to find the pets before the goblins do, the queen said, sounding determined. Christy and Rachel looked at each other. Then at the same time they said, we are harp girls on guard. All the fairies cheered when the girls agreed to help. Thank you, King Oberon said, smiling. It's very kind of you to help us again. The magic pets may be hard to find, Queen Titiana warned them. In Fairyland, they are tiny, fairy-sized pets. But in the human world, they can be any size they wish. They can also work some fairy magic of their own, so you will have to look very carefully. Shimmer meowed suddenly, and Katie bent her head to listen. Her face turned serious. Shimmer said that a kitten in the human world needs our help. She told the others it has no home. Shimmer and I need to find one for it. Katie turned to the king and queen. Can we go rescue the kitten? The king and queen both hesitated. We'd love for you to help, the queen began slowly, but we don't want the goblins to catch Shimmer, the king finished. Maybe he would go with Katie and Shimmer, Christy suggested. We could protect them from the goblins. The king and queen looked at each other. Then Queen Titiana nodded. That would be all right, she said. That's very nice of you girls, but you must all be careful. You know how tricky and mean the goblins can be. We'll be careful, Katie said, her face lighting up. Let's go. She waved her wand, and a trail of amber-colored fairy dust trailed from it. The dust trickled down around Christy and Rachel. And suddenly Fairyland blurred before their eyes. A magical wind swept them up, and they flew through the air with Katie and Shimmer. In a rush of color and light, the girls found themselves in their own world. They were human-sized again. "We are back in the park," Richard said, looking around. "Watch out for goblins, everyone." Katie was still holding tiny Shimmer. She flew to hide on Christy's shoulder while the girls looked around for goblins. Then the magic kitten jumped down from Katie's arms and curled up on Christy's shoulder. Christy could feel his little tail twitching back and forth. "That tickles," she giggled as Shimmer batted playfully on her hair. "The coast is clear," Rachel said, after the girls had scanned the park. "Let's start looking for a homeless kitten." "We'll have to search carefully," Katie advised. "If it's scared, it could have hidden somewhere." The four of them set off, keeping their ears open for meows. Katie flew behind the girls at shoulder height, while Shimmer padded along beside her in midair. "It's so much fun to watch him," Christy thought. Even though the tiny kitten was hovering magically in the air, he moved just as if he were on the ground. Sometimes he padded along, occasionally he pounced, and every so often he stopped to stalk a floating dandelion seed or to chase his own fluffy tail. He seemed particularly interested in the elastic holding Rachel's ponytail, which had a couple of pink stars dangling from it. A few times he leaped up to catch the stars between his tiny paws. "Come on, Shimmer, we've got work to do," Katie reminded him. She fluttered over to scoop him out of Rachel's hair. Where could that last kitten be? Suddenly Shimmer pricked up his ears and stopped. His little pink nose turned up and his whiskers twitched as he sniffed the air. Then he took a flying leap down to the ground. In a bright burst of sparkles, he grew to the size of a normal kitten. Shimmer raced off ahead of the girls toward the playground. "I think he found a kitten," Katie smiled, flying behind her pet. "Come on, girls." Rachel and Christy ran after Shimmer as he bolted through the grass just before he reached the playground. He swerved towards a tall elm tree and sat at the bottom, looking up at it. Christy, Rachel, and Katie gazed up to see that Shimmer had found on one of the highest branches, huddled against the trunk and looking down at them with big golden eyes, sat a tiny tabby kitten. Shimmer's plan. "Poor little thing," Christy exclaimed. "It's only a baby." Just then a breeze blew through the tree, and the tabby kitten pounced on the leaf that was flapping nearby. It almost lost its balance and tumbled out of the tree. "Careful, Kitty," Katie called up. The kitten sat down and stared started washing its paws. Shimmer ran a little way up the tree towards the tabby kitten and started meowing. The kitten meowed back eagerly. Oh, the poor kitten climbed the tree to get out of the wind last night, and now it's stuck. Katie translated Shimmer and the other kitten's meow. It's too scared to climb back down. Should I climb up and get it? Rachel offered. Before Katie could reply, Shimmer started meowing again. The fairy listened, then looked over at the nearby playground. Good idea, Shimmer, she said, smiling. Then she turned back to the girls. Thanks for the offer, Rachel, but Shimmer has someone else in mind for the job, she explained with a grin. She pointed her wand in the direction of the playground. See that boy in the red shirt at the top of the jungle gym? She asked. The one with black hair? Krusty said, squinting. Katie nodded. That's the one, she replied. Would you ask him if he can help you get the kitten down from the tree? Okay, Krusty agreed, confused. Trust me, Katie said. It's very important that it is that boy who rescues this kitten. She winked at the girls. Shimmer meowed loudly, as if he was agreeing with Katie. All right, Rachel laughed. Come on, Krusty. Shimmer shrank back down to very pet size. He and Katie hid in the tree while Rachel and Krusty ran over to the playground. The dark-haired boy had just jumped out of the jungle gym when the girls arrived. Hello, Krusty said, giving him a friendly smile. I'm Krusty, and this is Rachel. Could you help us rescue a kitten that's stuck in a tree? We saw how good you are at climbing, Rachel explained. We were wondering if you could climb up the tree and get it down. Sure, the boy replied eagerly. My name is James, and I love cats. Where's the kitten? The girls pointed out at the elm tree. James yelled over to tell his dad where he was going. Then he followed Krusty and Rachel to the tree. James looked up at the kitten. Don't worry, little kitten. I'll have you down in 2 minutes, he called, and began to climb. Krusty and Rachel watched as he clambered higher and higher. Just as he was about to reach the branch that the tabby kitten was perched on, the kitten jumped down onto James' shoulders and butted its head gently against the boy's cheek. Krusty blinked. It looked like a haze of amber-colored sparkles surrounded James and the kitten. She glanced at Rachel, and they both grinned knowingly. More pet fairy magic. James carefully carried the tabby kitten all the way back down to the ground. It's so tiny, he marveled, stroking the kitten gently. I wonder where it lives. He doesn't have a color or a name tag, Krusty said. It looks like a stray. Here comes my dad, James said as a tall, dark-haired man strolled over. Dad, look, we found the lost kitten. His eyes brightened suddenly. Hey, Dad, can we keep it? James's dad smiled. Your mom and I have been talking about getting you a pet, he said, but we can't just take this one without checking to make sure it doesn't belong to someone else. He looked around to see if the kitten's owner was somewhere in the park. We've been here for a while, Krusty said politely. Nobody seems to be looking for the kitten. Please, James said quickly, as soon as his dad hesitated. We can take it home with us and called the animal shelter from our house. He stroked it again. Oh, it's pouring, Dad. It likes me. James's dad ruffled his son's hair. Okay, then, he said. If nobody reported the kitten missing, then I think you can keep it. Hooray! Shouted James, beaming from ear to ear. He tickled the tabby kitten under its chin, and the kitten purred even louder. Do you think that Dusty would be a good name? James wondered out loud. Rachel nudged Christy. She had spotted a few more flecks of fairy dust twinkling in the air around James and the kitten. Oh, Dusty would be a wonderful name, she said, trying not to giggle. Well done, Dusty, James's dad said, petting the kitten. We'd better take you home. Grasping goblins. The girls watched as James and his dad walked away happily with their new kitten. Good work, girls, Katie exclaimed as she came out from her hiding place in the tree. I think Dusty and James will be very happy together. Shimmer scampered along a tree branch, purring loudly to show that he agreed, and the girls laughed. Fairy magic is wonderful, Rachel said with a smile. She watched as Shimmer sniffed at a beetle on a nearby leaf and gave a tiny fairy-sized sneeze. Just then Christy heard a rustling sound from a little higher up in the tree. She looked up to see a goblin. And then another, and then another. She gasped. There was a whole chain of grinning goblins hanging down from one branch of the tree. The lowest goblin was dangling just above the branch where Shimmer were perched. He was reaching out to grab the magic kitten. No, you don't, cried Christy, scooping up Shimmer just in time. Give it to me, the goblin growled, lunging after the kitten. Shimmer meowed in alarm as the goblin's fingers came within a whisker of him. But the goblin had reached too far, and the other goblins couldn't hold on to him. They all tumbled out to the ground, landing in a big green heap of tangled arms and legs. Ouch! You're squishing me, grumbled one goblin. Get off, groaned another. Katie grinned at the girls. Come on, let's go while we have the chance, she said. Christy held out her hands and let Shimmer run through the air to Christy, and they walked away from the pile of grumpy goblins. I don't think Jack Frost will be very happy when they come back empty-handed, Christy said, glancing back over her shoulder. The goblins were still bickering. No, Jack Frost wouldn't be happy, Katie agreed. She suddenly shivered. He'll send them out again to look for another fairy pet. She cuddled her kitten tightly at the thought of it. Let's get you safely back to Fairyland, Shimmer, she said in her sweet voice. Goodbye, girls, and thank you for everything. Katie hugged the girls in turn, and then Shimmer nuzzled his tiny nose against each of their faces. Goodbye, little Shimmer, Christy giggled, giggling as his fur tickled her nose. It's been nice to meet you. Tell the other pet fairies that we'll keep looking for their lost pets, Rachel added, blowing Katie and Shimmer a kiss. We were, Katie promised. Goodbye. She tucked Shimmer carefully under one arm, then waved her wand. A shower of amber-colored lights twinkled around Katie and Shimmer, and then they were gone. Rachel and Christy smiled at each other and headed for home. After all the excitement, they were both hungry. "I'm so glad we found a nice home for Dusty," Rachel said happily. "Everything worked out perfectly. It couldn't have gone better." Christy slipped her arms through Rachel as they walked out of the park gate. "I can't wait to find another one of the lost fairy pets," she said excitedly. "It looks like another fairy adventure isn't far away." The end.